Introduction. Su-yang travels through the world of the novel, Supernatural Mechanic. At the beginning, was it as a researcher to draw blood for Aurora. Haila, you don't want your sister to turn into a sauce, do you? Star Dragon Land Defense Bureau. Xiao opened his mouth wide and looked at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him with a terrifying look in his eyes. He was surprised and said, "Why are you everywhere? You sneak around on Blue Star Street. Chapter 1 Hela, you don't want your sister to turn into a sauce, do you?" You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Syringe. Su-yang rubbed his eyes, thinking it was because he was too tired and had hallucinations. When he opened his eyes again, he found that everything around him was still the same. In the pure white room, there is a simple set of tables and chairs, a bookshelf filled with books, and a pure white bed like angel wings. On the wall opposite the bed is a huge transparent glass cover, and on the other side is a toilet. Looking from this direction, the squatting toilet in the toilet is clearly visible. Su-yang, don't daydream, give me the syringe. The sound diverted Su-yang's attention back to the only bed in the room. At this moment, a thin and small body in hospital uniform was sitting on the bed, with several figures in white coats surrounding her for various tests. The speaker was a middle-aged man who appeared to be around 40 years old, with a fanatical smile mixed with a hint of displeasure on his face. Obviously, the middle-aged man was a bit angry about Su-yang's failure to execute his orders in a timely manner. Although he hadn't figured out what was happening and his mind was in chaos, Su-yang still instinctively rummaged through the medicine box in the small car beside him. Quickly, he handed over a syringe to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man just gave him a glare and didn't say much before turning around. At first, Su-yang thought these people were treating the little girl in bed. After all, everything around them was too much like the treatment that a seriously ill patient should enjoy. But soon, he found himself shallow. The middle-aged person holding a syringe not only injected the little girl with some medication, but also drew her blood. Yes, she was the one who drew her blood. Draw one big tube at a time. The bright red blood in the syringe looks so dazzling. The little girl has a head of snow-white hair, but it has already dried up. The layer of skin wrapped around the dry body has a unique pale color that is not exposed to sunlight for years. When the needle pierced her body, her small body trembled slightly, but she didn't make a sound. She just furrowed her brows and quietly gazed at everything in front of her. All right. After drawing a full tube of blood, the middle-aged man stood up, raised the syringe in his hand high, and his eyes became even more fanatical. As one of his words fell, the other white coats also stood up. The little girl lifted the blanket and dived into the bed, leaving only a small head to watch the commotion outside. Between her movements, her loose medical gown moved, revealing dense pinholes. Su-yang couldn't help but shift his gaze away. When he turned back again, he only saw the little girl's big eyes blinking and blinking on her exposed little head. Although she tried to show calmness as much as possible, it was still difficult to conceal her inner confusion. Su-yang wanted to do something, but his always cautious personality suppressed his impulse. Now he hasn't even figured out the tangled thoughts in his mind, and reckless actions will only harm others and himself. Let's go. The middle-aged man put the blood from the syringe into a test tube and sealed it, calling everyone to leave. Su-yang looked at his white coat and naturally had to follow him. What is this? Turning his head, he suddenly noticed the mark on the left chest of the white coats. Half a sapling. Su-yang felt like he had heard this mark somewhere before. Thin little girl. Blood drawn. White coat. Half a sapling imprint. This is the sprout. I have traveled into the world of super mechanic. Su-yang's heart couldn't calm down for a long time, but he didn't shout or scream. The group walked around and quickly arrived at a spacious laboratory. After instructing everyone to perform their respective duties, the middle-aged leader took out 2 tubes of red liquid from the instruments in the car. One of the tubes is relatively thin and was the blood that Su Yang just helped to extract. The other tube is relatively thick and should be the bone marrow extracted by the researcher before Su Yang's crossing. Middle-aged people placed them on a testing instrument with great care. After a while, he noticed that Su Yang was still frozen in place, pondering for a moment, and said, "Su Yang, I see you haven't been in a good state today. Let's do this. You go back and rest for a while, and come back to work tomorrow." "Yes, Mr. Cerberus." Su Yang nodded. That's right, he guessed the name of the middle-aged man, Cyberlos, one of the highest-level researchers in Sprout, and one of the few characters in the original Sprout plot. That Sprout organization has appeared multiple times. Of course, this is not because Su Yang has already absorbed the memories of his predecessor. In fact, his mind is still in chaos now, and the densely packed memories make him feel like his brain is about to explode. The reason why it can be confirmed that the middle-aged person is Cerberus is because he knows that Aurora has always been the subject of Cerberus's experiment. In the original text, it seems that apart from the leader, only this guy can bring people into Aurora's detention room. Faced with Su Yang's reply, the middle-aged man frowned and looked at Su Yang strangely. His gaze was filled with scrutiny. Did I remember wrong? Su Yang let out a thud in his heart, and a sense of foreboding surged in his heart. If you say the wrong thing in a place like Menya, it might just be a sliced meal. The middle-aged man stared at Su Yang without blinking, as if to determine whether he was the guy he knew. In the end, he didn't say anything, just waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and go back and rest, young man. Don't tire yourself out." Su Yang walked out of the laboratory with some shame. Why did I guess wrong? Empiricism is not worth it. It's better to be careful when encountering such situations in the future. To be honest, just calling, "Sir," didn't mean there was nothing wrong with it. Outside the laboratory was a long corridor, and Su Yang looked left and right but didn't know which direction to take. So he walked along the road he had just come over. He walked the road here at least once, so as not to casually enter any penalty area. What he needs to do now is just wait for the fusion of memories. If it weren't for the fear of middle-aged people coming out and seeing it, he wouldn't want to leave. In front of the maze-like winding corridor, a fiery beauty hugged her chest with both hands and leaned against the wall in silence. She was wearing a tight black combat uniform, giving off a very sophisticated feeling. A head of red long curly hair draped on both sides, revealing the beauty of both three-dimensional and soft facial features, like a hybrid of Eastern and Western people, beautiful and moving. It was one of the budding executives, Yura's sister, Haila. At this moment, she had just finished visiting her sister and thought of her increasingly emaciated body, feeling a deep sadness. "It's all my fault for not protecting you back then." She couldn't help but recall some past events. "Are you Haila?" Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Haila lifted her head and immediately frowned. The young man who appeared in front of her was quite gentle in appearance, with short black hair, an oval face, sword eyebrows, and a delicate facial shape. Coupled with his height of about 1.8 meters, even wearing a white coat could not conceal his charm. However, since her sister was arrested, Haila has become increasingly disgusted with these people wearing white coats. "What's going on?" Haila stared at the newcomer with a cold and indifferent tone. "It's really you." Su Yang walked up to Haila with a few steps, his eyes filled with excitement to see his idol. He exclaimed, "Is this Haila? The beauty of anime is really so gorgeous." He reached out his hand and said, "Hello, meet me. My name is Su Yang, a researcher at the base." Haila looked at his hand with a cold expression, as if questioning, "Do I know you well?" Su Yang smiled awkwardly, his eyes intentionally or unintentionally glancing at the cameras around him. It has been quite some time since he came out of the laboratory, and although the memories in his mind have not fully fused, he has already learned a lot. For example, the monitoring system at the base. Except for a few very important areas, general area monitoring is done through cameras without any sound, and it is not as advanced as he imagined. Of course, if not taken seriously, it may be recognized by lip language and stored in a database. So, should you be careful when speaking or should you be careful? Haila keenly noticed Su Yang's movements, and a hint of doubt flashed in her eyes. After adjusting the angle and confirming that he was not facing directly in any of the cameras, Su Yang smiled and said, "Aurora." Upon hearing this name, Hela's face suddenly changed, and a huge spiritual pressure filled the air, making Su Yang feel cold all over, as if he was in an ice cellar. Su Yang smiled bitterly, knowing that if he dared to communicate with Haila about these things, he would definitely face hostility. However, wealth insurance is sought after. If there are no special circumstances, Haila will only return to headquarters once every 2 months. The headquarters personnel are mixed and the population is large. As a research fellow at the headquarters, Su Yang was already lucky enough to see Haila today. I don't know when he will see her again next time. So, it is necessary to gain some consensus now. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Moreover, the current time is already July 1st, 687 in the lunar calendar. If Su Yang remembers correctly, July 3rd, 688 was the time for the public beta of Star C. When the protagonist Han Xiao crossed over, it was almost a year before the game's public beta. That is to say, Zero is about to be born, he is coming over soon. Su Yang hasn't figured out how to approach him. However, what needs to be debated still needs to be debated. For example, Haila and Aurora, a super thug, a super nanny. What's even more rare is that they are all stunning beauties. Since Su Yang has seen them, he must find a way to keep them in his pocket. Not only for the safety of one's own life, but also for the happiness of one's future. In order to quickly attract Haila's attention, he kept saying without hesitation, "Haila, you don't want your sister to become Eujola sauce, do you? How dare you?" As soon as the words came out, a stronger spiritual force swept over him, as if tearing him apart. Seeing that Haila seemed to be getting serious, Su Yang quickly shouted out, "I am one of the researchers in the Aurora research group. In my research, I have learned some secrets about Aurora, maybe I can save her. In addition, I have awakened some predictive abilities. If you kill me, you will get nothing and may even be punished. Your sister will also be drawn to death." Su Yang's words were urgent and quick, but Haila clearly understood them. "Follow me." Haila stood up straight and stepped forward. Looking from behind, the bee's waist is curved and sexy, emitting an intoxicating aura all over. Chapter 2. I Want You. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang. Close the door. Haila pulled up a wooden chair and sat down on it, pointing to the sofa next to her and gesturing to Su Yang, "You also sit down." As Su Yang sat down, she continued, "Come on, you can say anything you know here. There's no surveillance in this office." As an executive, although not the most advanced type, she still has this privacy right. Menya cannot monitor every executive like a prisoner without any privacy. Haila's private office is not large, only over 10 square meters, and not even as large as Yura's detention room. The things placed in the office are also very simple, including a desk, an office chair, a bookshelf, a sofa, and a water dispenser. The only difference from a regular office may be a weapon rack next to the bookshelf. There are some firearms on it, long and short, and Su Yang doesn't know exactly what type they are. Upon hearing Haila's question, Su Yang said, "As I mentioned to you before, I have some ability to predict the future. I foresee that your sister Aurora will die in the future due to blood drawing, and even the body will be sliced and studied by sprouts, and applied in future wars." This time, hearing Su Yang's words, Haila's emotions stabilized a lot. She asked, "How do I know you're not lying to me?" Su Yang shrugged and said, "Of course, in plain language, you have the right to question. So, I'll provide you with a message, and then you'll know if I'm lying to you." Within a month, the Valkyrie experiment will successfully create the first experimental body, named Zero. But in all the experiments, Zero did not show much outstanding talent. And you will train him as the instructor for Zero, and 6 months later, this Zero. Su Yang and Yu Guang catch sight of Haila getting closer and closer, and the smell of perfume on his body penetrates into his nose, which makes his eyes cannot help casting over. Haila's tone was gentle, as if she had suddenly transformed into a neighbor's older sister, and she said, "Keep talking." Warm words and soft words lingered in Su Yang's ears, and his wine-red long curly hair inadvertently swept over his neck, making him feel a bit itchy. The half-open neckline flashed with a large snowflake, almost causing Su Yang to lose his composure. However, after being trained by various teachers on Earth, Su Yang ultimately managed to maintain his image. He tilted his body and avoided Hela's increasingly oppressive figure, saying, "What's the problem behind Zero? I won't tell you for now. Anyway, if what I said earlier proves successful, should it also prove what I said?" Haila originally intended to provide some spiritual guidance to Su Yang, but she was not good at it, and the final result was not ideal. After all, compared to guiding people's spirit, she is better at destroying a person's spiritual power and directly killing that person's soul. Faced with Su Yang's question, Haila sat back and nodded. "If what you said is true, I believe your previous statements. But, what are you saying for? This is asking knowingly. Of course, it could also be because she doesn't believe Su Yang has the ability to save her sister at all." Su Yang breathed a sigh and said, "I have a way to save Yura. At least it can make her environment better than it is now." "Haila. What do you want?" Haila couldn't have been naive enough to believe that the other party was trying to save her sister for some justice, so she asked her own question without hesitation. Seeing that he had finally taken the initiative, Su Yang wanted to ease the atmosphere on one hand, but on the other hand, he couldn't help but feel a bit playful. So, in a joking tone, he said, "I want you." "Sure." "Ah." Su Yang looked at Haila in shock, and the second half of the sentence he wanted to take was swallowed by him. At this moment, there was still not much expression on Haila's charming and indifferent face, but what was rare was that Su Yang seemed to feel a hint of firmness from it. Su Yang thought to himself, "It seems that Haila is really a perfect girl control. For the sake of her sister, she sold herself without even thinking about it. All I had thought about before was asking her to be my bodyguard for 2 years, but I didn't expect to agree directly. I said, if you really can save my sister, I can do anything." Hela helped her long curly hair, her tone cold. Every 2 months of meeting made Hela aware of Yura's changes. Her once tender and full body was already riddled with wounds and bones. The power of the undead on Hela's body allows her to clearly sense the passing of Aurora's vitality. In Hera's perspective of the soul, Aurora is no longer like an old man in his twilight years, as brilliant as the scorching sun. Haila knows that Eujola may not be able to persist for a few years. Every time she thinks about it, she inevitably feels heartbroken. Especially when Aurora sees her, the forced smile on her face makes her feel heartbroken and self-blaming. However, despite Hela's hard work in honing herself and improving her strength over the years, she still lacks any confidence in rescuing her sister from the sprouts. The more she understands the organization, the less daring she is to act rashly. Now, suddenly a person appeared saying that she could save her sister, and Haila naturally had some expectations. If the other party really has the ability to save her sister, she can repay the other party with all her might. If the other party overestimates their abilities and ultimately fails, it doesn't matter what conditions she promises, there's no need to execute them anyway. The only concern is that if the other party fails, it will affect herself, but this small issue, Haila believes that as long as she doesn't get too involved, she can still solve it. Haila simply fooled Su Yang. After waking up, he quickly smiled and reached out his hand, saying, "That's a deal." Su Yang doesn't engage in those empty-headed and brainless things, he's just a greedy body. If there is a chance, it is natural to first keep her body in the account, and as for the relationship, it can be gradually cultivated in the future. Haila glanced at Su-yang, reached out her hand and shook hands with him, then busied herself with her affairs. Su-yang felt the lingering charm of the handshake. Don't say, although Haila goes out and fights with people every day, her little hands are really smooth and tender. Seeing Haila ignoring him, he simply lowered his body and lay down on the sofa. Soft and elastic, with the perfume smell of Haila. Su-yang felt that the fusion of two souls in his mind had accelerated. He closed his eyes and focused his mind in the hope of accelerating memory fusion. Unconsciously, Su-yang fell asleep. Ding, it has been detected that the fusion of the host's soul is complete, and the *** system is turned on. Ding, a newbie gift package has been detected. Considering the current situation, it will be automatically opened for the host. The beginner's gift package is being opened. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the ability, damage absorption. In a daze, these sounds rang in Su-yang's ear. Suddenly, he suddenly opened his eyes. A blue light curtain appeared in front of him. Host. Su-yang race. Carbon-based human, yellow, template. NPC rank. F, mortal, 0.100000 experience required to reach the next rank specialization. Geometric thinking. Intelligence +5 intermediate spiritual resilience. Willpower resistance +6 sprout junior researcher. Intelligence +2 damage absorption type I, unique skill for abilities. When taking damage, you can absorb any damage that is not higher than your own attack power, convert it into your own experience points, and offset the current damage. The conversion rate increases with level, and currently the conversion rate is 10%. In addition, if the damage taken is higher than one's own attack power, the final damage will be reduced by 10%. Skill. Basic shooting. You can use most ordinary firearms, but the shooting speed and accuracy are not commendable. Equipment. None, panel. I didn't expect to have this thing myself. Su-yang was really surprised. However, he quickly discovered the abnormality in his panel. Seems like it's a bit simpler. All attributes, levels, and influences have been hidden. The attributes added after a few specialties let him know that he also has these things on him. Su-yang felt a bit uneasy about this. After all, not being able to see one's specific attributes is often difficult to operate. The saying goes, knowing oneself and the enemy is invincible in 100 battles. In the future, it will be troublesome for him to figure out his own situation, let alone others. Su-yang quickly got out of his dilemma and shifted his attention to the previous prompt sound, saying, "If you come, be safe." He vaguely heard that the system seemed to have given him a beginner gift package, which activated a special ability. Damage absorption. It should be the damage absorption type I on the panel. After carefully studying the description of this expertise, Su-yang couldn't help but exclaim, "Damage absorption, it's just that type 1 is so impressive, and the ability rating may be on par with those super high-risk abilities, right? Perhaps it's not as destructive as those super high-risk abilities, but when it comes to resistance, when it comes to development, it's definitely a standout." He keenly felt that his ability was not simple. "Are you awake?" A hoarse yet sexy voice came in. Haila had already stood up, tidying up her things. Su-yang said hoarsely, "I'm sorry, I accidentally fell asleep just now." Haila didn't care and said, "Hurry up and leave, I'm about to leave." "Let's go." "Where are we going?" Su-yang's thoughts were still lingering on the newly opened system panel, but he didn't react for a moment. "Wakili Laboratory, didn't you say that Experiment 0 is about to be born? You wouldn't know which laboratory I was tasked with protecting." Su-yang smiled bitterly, and Haila spoke without any mercy. He wanted Hela to stay for a while longer, but thinking that he was still like a headless fly, he didn't ask to stay in the end. He just asked, "When will you be back next time?" Haila kept moving her hands and said, 2 months from now. How can I contact you? You know, communication at the base is restricted. Su-yang spread his hand, hoping that Haila could find a way. No, communication both inside and outside the headquarters is restricted, and even internal communication is strictly monitored by the intelligent brain. Haila paused and continued, my internal number is 234XXX34. Don't contact me unless absolutely necessary. Online communication is much more dangerous than offline communication. After carefully taking down the number, Su-yang nodded and said, okay. After speaking, he left Hela's office first. Su-yang, why are you here? Just as he walked out of the room, a voice came that startled Su-yang, who was completely unprepared. Chapter 3. Research on the ability of damage absorption. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Coming towards him was a young man with a slightly plump figure, around 25 years old, with a head of golden hair. After the memory fusion was completed, Su-yang naturally knew who he was. Shak, one of the members of the Aurora research group, is also a junior researcher along with Su-yang. Commonly known as a laborer. However, Su-yang is more valued by senior management and has a promising promotion, while he is not favored by others. By the way, I have to mention the middle-aged man Su-yang mistakenly admitted to at the beginning. His name is Zheng Hai, a first-level researcher at Manya Research Institute. He is the deputy leader of Su-yang's research group and also one of the senior executives of the research institute who is interested in Su-yang's glaucoma. Although the Aurora research group is not a permanent organization, there are many members below. In addition to the special-level researcher of the team leader, Cyberlos, there are also 3 first-level researchers as deputy team leaders, responsible for blood sample collection, development of healing potions, and bioengineering research. Zheng Hai is the deputy team leader responsible for blood sample collection and analysis of Yura's physical condition. Except for Cerberus, who sometimes has a sudden impulse and personally goes to collect Aurora's blood and bone marrow, Zheng Hai usually organizes people to collect blood and bone marrow. Let's get to the point. It is precisely because of the eccentricity of the senior management that Shak's perception of Su-yang is extremely poor. He has always believed that Su-yang is a sycophantic person who always puts on a serious work attitude in front of senior leaders, but in fact, it is fake and serious. So, at this moment, Shak is greeting Su-yang on the surface, behind his back, his eyes unconsciously glanced towards the office behind Su-yang. Unfortunately, the office door had already closed by now, and he couldn't see anything. Shak thought to himself, I don't know which leader Su-yang is trying to flatter again. Wait until I catch your handle and see if I don't expose you in front of the higher-ups. On the other hand, when faced with Shak's question, Su-yang casually responded, it's nothing, it's just that he hasn't been feeling well lately. Find a mental health expert to help stimulate him. After speaking, he turned around and left. It's difficult for a small character like Shak to have any substantial impact on him. Moreover, the fact that Haila is Yura's sister was classified as top secret at the beginning, and only the top management knew about it. Even if most people know that he is in contact with Haila, they will not think about rescuing Aurora. So, Su-yang can rest assured to do his own thing. There are still many places for him to experiment with his newly acquired abilities. Mental stimulation. Shak looked at the office door, and the words, Executive Number 98, came into view. He has heard of this 98th executive, probably named Haila. He does have psychic abilities. Moreover, I heard she is still a beautiful woman. In private, some even refer to it as the flower of Sprouts, considering it the most beautiful woman in Sprouts. However, the other party's divine dragon never saw the end, and they never had the chance to see each other, which Shak regretted. If Su-yang comes out from inside. Did she come back? Shak felt his heart beating faster. He quickly wiped his hair with his hand and, feeling good about himself, made a handsome pose and stood eagerly at the door. For the convenience of research, the dormitory area of the Sprout Research Institute is located on the same floor as the laboratory. In the middle, dozens of regions, big and small, were divided according to the different experimental properties. Each laboratory in the region has its own dormitory area, leisure room, gym and other supporting facilities. With clear memories, Su-yang didn't spend much time returning to his dormitory. As a third-level researcher who can enter the budding underground headquarters, even if he is just doing odd jobs, he still has his own, single room. Su-yang's suite is not big, at best only about 20 square meters. After entering, there is a bathroom on the left side, equipped with a nozzle, bathroom heater, and washing machine. Moving forward, there is a spacious room with a large bed in the center and common furniture such as wardrobes, bookshelves, and desks on both sides. The layout of the entire suite is not like an ordinary family, but rather very similar to a hotel. The room is very clean and tidy. It can be seen that the person named Su-yang from his predecessor was also a particular person. However, by understanding his predecessor's experience, one can understand why he is so particular. When his predecessor was very young, he was adopted by the Sprout organization. Under the cultivation of Sprout, he learned various knowledge, received Sprout ideological education, and had the highest ideal of overthrowing the rule of the 6 countries. Plus, my predecessor was already a submissive person, always doing whatever the boss asked me to do. So, since his teacher taught him that, if he wants to overthrow the 6 kingdoms, he must first organize his own internal affairs, he has kept it in mind and has been practicing it to this day. Orthodox plus obedient, this is why the predecessor was able to win the favor of the senior management of the Sprout Research Institute. Sitting on the office chair, Su-yang took out a fruit knife from the drawer. After thinking about it, he first put down the fruit knife. Then, standing up, he slapped himself on the buttocks. With a loud pop sound, Su-yang was so painful that tears were about to fall. There's nothing he can do, he's afraid he's using too little force and won't be able to deal any damage. After finishing the fight, Su-yang eagerly opened the system panel. I saw a dynamic refresh right below the panel. You have been attacked by Su-yang, with a health of 0.2. Damage absorption I, takes effect, and your current attack power is 5.7. The damage judgment is 2.5, and the damage is invalid. You gain 0.2 experience points. The attack power of 5.7 should be the strength that my body can currently emit. As for why, it's a range, not a definite number. Su-yang touched his chin and said, it must be related to my current state. Su-yang looked above the panel. Sure enough, after the rank, it has changed to F, 0.2/100000. He meowed, how could he only give 0.2 experience points in such pain? Su-yang felt quite unworthy holding his buttocks. Despite the pain, when the damage is absorbed, it will eventually recover immediately. But this painful experience is real. A slap gives 0.2 experience, 100,000 experience requires 500,000 slaps, slapping hard takes 2.3 seconds, slapping 500,000 slaps takes 10.20 days. Considering the need for work, food, and sleep, doubling the time and then taking a detour, 1.2 months should be similar, I don't know, but with this calculation, Su-yang suddenly realized that he could quickly enter level E and become a true superpower. When he enters the E. level, Han Xiao is still undergoing labor reform. Su-yang suddenly felt energized. Zhaoshuyuan.com. The first experiment is completed, and now we will proceed to the second experiment. Su-yang picked up the small knife on the table with one hand, extended the other hand, avoided the artery, and slashed towards the palm of his hand. Although he has lived 2 lives, this action still makes him feel scared. After all, even its predecessor was at most just someone else's knife. The small knife gestured and gestured on the body, and finally landed on the meat. As the knife fell, blood flowed out of the wound and quickly formed droplets outside. You have been attacked by Su-yang, with a health of 0.3. Damage absorption I, takes effect, and your current attack power is 13.17. The damage judgment is 313, and the damage is invalid. You gain 0.3 experience points. Because he was afraid that he might not be able to control the force well, Su Yang's knife did not cause much damage at first glance. However, the effect he wants to achieve has already been reflected. After adding the small knife, the floating range of attack power has indeed increased. Although he doesn't know how the system will determine if the damage is within the floating range of attack power, he at least knows that the attack power determination of damage absorption I can be stacked with equipment. In this way, his time to enter the E. level will be further shortened. Suyang touched the completely healed palm and was amazed. This is much more intuitive than his slap. Just now, there was still continuous blood flow, and in the blink of an eye, I couldn't find any wounds anymore. What impressed him the most was the blood overflowing from his palm. Surprisingly, it all flowed back. It's like turning back time. Suyang couldn't help but sigh at the incredible craftsmanship of nature. Chapter 4. The research team suggests suspending the blood draw on Eujola. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the night of July 1st, Suyang conducted many experiments and ultimately found that kowtowing was the simplest and most direct way of self-harm. Suyang estimated that it was mainly because the head concentrated the most precise components of the body, and a slight vibration could have an impact on the entire body. Therefore, hitting the head with the same force would cause higher damage. Strong concealment and easy control, Suyang believes this can be used as a common way to gain experience in his daily life. Finally, I looked at the eye panel. The rank column has already changed to F. 576/100000, although eating and researching took a lot of time, the final result was still good. With a relaxed mood, the fatigue of staying up late seems to have dissipated quite a bit. However, when Suyang saw himself in the washing mirror, he was still startled. Who is this person? Why is there such a big panda eye? I didn't expect this body to be so unable to withstand Huohua. After only staying up all night, the bags under my eyes became so thick. It seems we need to be more careful in the future. We still need to have necessary sleep. The latest test data for the blood sample placed in the scanner in Laboratory 5 has been released yesterday. Zheng Hai is organizing manpower to conduct a new batch of blood sample analysis, while he himself is browsing past research reports on the computer. This is something that Aurora must complete immediately after each blood sample collection. He must submit the new research report to Cyberlos and copy other deputy team leaders and budding leaders no later than tonight. Upon seeing Suyang walk in, Zheng Hai waved at him and said, "Suyang, could you compile a data table of Aurora's recent physical condition and make it into a presentation? It may be useful when the team leader reports to the leader later on." Ah. Good. Suyang didn't expect to be caught as a strong soldier as soon as he entered, and his actions were exactly the same as those he did on Earth. He appears to be a researcher, but in fact, he is no different from a clerk. However, this is exactly what he wants. Yesterday, just after crossing over and not even opening the system panel, Suyang dared to compliment Haila, not because he had lost his intelligence. But rather, based on the original information, Suyang judged that as an insider, rescuing Aurora may not be easy, but improving Aurora's living environment is actually not difficult. This actually mainly involves an issue of information asymmetry. So far, it seems that Menya has not realized that Aurora's regenerative ability is not a physical problem, but a supernatural problem. The biggest difference between the two is that physical fitness cannot grow, while supernatural abilities can. But no wonder the dawn of life ability grew too slowly. Unlike the power of the dead, it exhibited extraordinary destructive power in the early stages. The early dawn of life is nothing but a strong vitality. After all, the budding researcher is only a researcher of surface civilization, and due to limited vision, it is normal to believe that this is a special physique. So it's easy to improve Yura's living environment, as long as Su Yang reports his speculation to the senior management of Menya. He doesn't believe that the top management of Menya can't distinguish between one meal full and one meal full. After all, at this time, the various budding sub-bases were still in a dormant state, and the demand for healing potions for the Yin people who were secretly poking was not so urgent. It is also easy to prove the existence of Aurora's powers. Just give her enough rest time. After the sprouts were destroyed in the original text, less than a month later, Aurora had already recovered from dry hair and emaciated bones, almost like a normal person. The hair has become soft again, the face has a shine, and the body has also grown flesh. So, as long as you include some private goods in this report, it should be no problem, Su Yang thought. This is his convenience as a researcher in the Aurora group. Although it is such a thing, it is very troublesome to do. Although Aurora is just one person, the monitoring of her physical indicators by Menya is multifaceted. Large and small, divided into dozens of data. Put these data together, there are really many things going on. It took Su Yang a whole morning to come up with a rough idea. It took another hour in the afternoon to produce the presentation. At this moment, Zhenghai had already stood beside him. Seeing him stand up, Zhenghai urgently asked, "Have you finished? Send it to me quickly. It's just your end." Su Yang looked around and it seemed to be true. Other researchers are already busy with some tasks related to the Super Warrior project. So he didn't care about resting. I immediately packed the files and sent them to Zhenghai. After receiving the document, Zhenghai did not carefully examine it. He just scanned it roughly and found no obvious errors, so he sent it to Cyberlos. And on Cyberlos's side, it is naturally impossible to go through so many files sent over bit by bit. I just took a rough look and when I had a clear idea, I stored it in my personal cloud drive. Neither of them realized that a guy who didn't want to be lonely had added some material to this document. At night, the conference room next to the leader's office is brightly lit. The executives of the headquarters and senior executives of the research institute rarely gathered together, and even some of the executives far away from the sub-base attended the meeting through virtual imaging. This is the monthly summary meeting of Menya. During the meeting, each sub-base and research institute needs to report the progress of their respective tasks to the headquarters. The headquarters will issue tasks again based on the actual situation. After all of this is done, members with insufficient qualifications will exit. Next is the internal meeting of the true senior management of Menya, a meeting with less than 30 attendees. Alright, Cyberlos, could you please report on the new developments at the research institute? Shortly after the meeting, the leader sat up straight and looked with great interest at Cyberlos, who was sitting in the second position on his left hand. Just now, under the repeated bombing of various sub-bases and research institutes, he, as a D+ level superpower, felt a buzzing sensation in his mind. But there is no other way, if we want to lead the sprouts further, these things cannot be avoided. However, now we can finally enter a relatively relaxed rhythm. The research of the headquarters research institute has always been highly anticipated by him. I hope we can have some surprises this time, the leader thought to himself. Okay, leader. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Cerberus stood up and asked the headquarters brain to retrieve the files stored in the cloud drive, starting to introduce them. First, let's take a look at the Super Warrior plan. As of now, this plan has been in progress for 2 years and 3 months. The external weapon design of the Super Warrior has been basically completed. The exoskeleton sub-project has achieved initial results, but there are still 2 challenges that need to be solved. The human body modification sub-project has already conducted the 22nd experimental body experiment, but the experimental body was declared dead after only 2 minutes and 6 seconds of survival after being injected with Valkyrie solution, and the cause is still under analysis. Finally, let's take a look at the latest research findings on Euler. After more than 2 years of blood drawing, Aurora's physical fitness has significantly declined, and the research team had to reduce the frequency of blood drawing to once every 10 days. In the latest blood draw. At this moment, Cyberlos had already stood on the podium in front of the big screen, showcasing the progress of the research institute to everyone without stopping. He is in the bud, not just as simple as the leader of the Aurora research group, but also the most experienced vice president of the headquarters research institute. This is also the reason why he can speak on behalf of the headquarters research institute. Based on the changes in Euler's physical condition before and after, the research team determined that Euler is highly likely to possess an unknown ability related to vitality. It is recommended that pause the blood draw on Euler. Help develop her ability. After reading a passage, Cyberlos felt more and more that something was not right. Pause the blood draw on Aurora. As the leader of the Aurora research group, why doesn't he know when the group made this decision? Chapter 5. Su Yang, why are you here? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Office of the Vice Dean of the Research Institute. Shanghai. How do you think you handled things? Ah. There was such a big mistake, and just saying, I don't know, wanted to cover it up. Mr. Cyberlos, I'm sorry. Sorry. If it's useful, I apologize to people every day. Do you know how awkward the situation was at that time? Me, Cyberlos. The first vice president of the research institute. How could you just represent me like this? You're trying to turn things around. If it weren't for my quick reaction and admitting that the suggestion was agreed upon jointly, wouldn't I know how others would laugh at me the next day? As soon as Shanghai arrived at the office, he was called over by Cyberlos. The one who covered his head and face was just a scolding. Shanghai was already in his 40s, blinking his hazy little eyes until Cyberlos lost his temper and still couldn't figure out what had happened. But it doesn't matter if he doesn't understand the situation, which doesn't prevent him from admitting his mistake first. The wise choice at this point is to try not to further stimulate the leader, otherwise it will be difficult to predict what the leader can do when they become angry and embarrassed. So, one by one, he said, I'm sorry, from Shanghai Cao. Don't be fooled by Cyberlos saying, it's useless to say sorry, verbally, if you really don't even say, sorry, then the problem is huge. A few minutes later, Cyberlos finally suppressed his anger and looked at Shanghai, who was huddled in the corner like a quail, feeling as if he had gone too far. Although Shanghai did not explain the latest research progress of the group in advance, after all, the research report was also submitted to him in advance, right? So, his face calmed down and he asked, who first proposed the conjecture that Aurora's constitution is supernatural. Bring him over to see me. Shanghai. He looked at Cyberlos's face and held a word in his heart, afraid to say it. After hesitating for a moment, Shanghai finally decided to go back to the laboratory and ask himself. Anyway, there were only a few people who wrote the report yesterday. Can you still not know what the situation is when you ask them one by one? Familiar laboratory. The researchers each fulfill their respective duties and are busy with their own tasks at hand. Suyang also found his predecessor's research project, the Aurora blood adaptability study, and pretended to pick up bottles and cans to work. From time to time, he even picked up his tablet and gestured, seemingly recording some important experimental data. Only he knows that he is just slacking off. What is this? Suddenly, Su Yang picked up something from the experimental medication and carefully examined it. Sulfuric acid, concentration 30%. How come this thing still exists? Seeing this thing, he instantly remembered his powers. Perhaps you can try using sulfuric acid. Su Yang took a dropper and carefully took out a drop of sulfuric acid from a plastic bottle, then dropped it onto the back of his hand. Throughout the entire process, Su Yang's eyes kept watching without blinking, ready to clean up at any time if something was wrong. After all, sulfuric acid is well known, and being careful is not excessive. You have been attacked by Su Yang, with a health of 0.1. Damage absorption I, takes effect, and your current attack power is 5.7. The damage judgment is 1-5, and the damage is invalid. You gain 0.1 experience points. X6, in just over 10 seconds, Su Yang received 6 damage judgments. And this judgment is still constantly being refreshed. After looking at the information on the eye panel, Su Yang was stunned and said, "Is this also considered my attack?" Next, he noticed the subsequent single damage and said, "Only 1 point, well, you can increase the intensity." At this moment, the intermittent burning sensation on the back of his hand had long been forgotten by Su Yang. He simply opened up a new battlefield on himself. A few minutes later, seeing that all the exposed parts of his body had been coated, Su Yang simply picked up a sulfuric acid bottle and walked out of the laboratory. After turning around, he came to the toilet. The budding toilet uses wooden compartments, and each compartment can only be connected to each other near the ceiling and below the ankle. This greatly facilitates Su Yang's movements. In the bathroom, he simply stripped himself naked, picked up a sulfuric acid bottle, poured out sulfuric acid from inside, and wiped it off his body. "Wipe a little bit on your hand, apply a little bit on your legs, a little bit on my shoulder too." After a while, Su Yang almost covered his entire body, not even his face. The burning sensation that constantly emanated throughout his body gave him a tearing pleasure. Fortunately, although there is pain in every area, the damage in each area is not high, even the single damage on the eyelids is only 3 points. As for the eyeballs, Su Yang doesn't want to become blind, even if it's just temporary. By the way, there's still one area that hasn't been painted. Su Yang's gaze couldn't help but turn to his crotch. He will never allow himself to have such a unique existence. A few seconds later, good news also came from the lifeline, and Su Yang enjoyed his masterpiece with satisfaction. The damage judgments in my mind are flying high. What is quite striking is that there is an additional damage judgment with a single damage of 6 points. Fortunately, the judgment passed and he is safe. In fact, at the beginning, Su Yang was also worried about the possibility of accumulating small injuries into big ones. But the final results indicate that the judgment time for different injuries is different. Even if it is only a small difference, the system's damage judgment will be differentiated. At least now, he doesn't have to worry about accumulating small injuries into big ones. With the assistance of sulfuric acid, Su Yang's experience points skyrocketed, and in less than 10 minutes, his total experience points had already exceeded the 6,000 mark. Perhaps I can enter the E. level before noon. Su Yang couldn't help but think of his future. Unfortunately, fate does not fulfill people's wishes. When the experience value remained at 6,875, the sound of the system came over. Ding, the host has a survival time of more than 10 minutes in sulfuric acid with a concentration of 30%. Go to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to obtain the expertise of primary sulfate antibodies. The host is 100% exempt from sulfuric acid with a concentration below 30%, inclusive, and significantly reduces the damage caused by sulfuric acid with a concentration higher than 30%. In addition, for other acidic liquids, different degrees of damage reduction are available depending on the liquid. It seems that the plan to enter the E. level while lying down is temporarily not feasible. Su Yang expressed some regret. I even sold chastity, and surprisingly only exchanged a few thousand experience points. Immediately after, he looked at the remaining sulfuric acid on his body and thought, we still need to take a shower, otherwise our clothes will corrode in minutes. The only thing that pleased him was that there was a small bathroom in the bathroom adjacent to the toilet. This small bathroom was designed for the convenience of researchers conducting special research to take a shower. After all, some studies do carry a strong flavor. It is still necessary to take a shower and change clothes before leaving the laboratory. This is quite convenient for Su Yang. Otherwise, he would have to feel the attention of passers-by naked. Suyang carefully opened a crack in the compartment door and only then did he quickly run out with a sulfuric acid bottle in hand, realizing that no one was there. I can't even care about the clothes placed on the top of the partition board. Suyang's current state also does not allow him to go and retrieve those clothes. However, come what you're afraid of. Sometimes, there are things that cannot be avoided simply by avoiding them. Although Suyang repeatedly confirmed the situation outside the toilet door, he was still discovered when he went out. Suyang, why are you here? A familiar voice, a familiar person. Why is this kid everywhere? Suyang really had an impulse to kill. Chapter 6. Leaders want to see you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Today, Shaq also came to work with dark circles under his eyes. Yesterday, outside the office of Executive Officer number 98, he was indeed allowed to wait for Haila. At the moment he saw Haila, Shaq instantly felt like he was in love. In his heart, he thought to himself, the rumor is indeed not unfounded. Haila Executive really has the qualifications to become the most beautiful woman in the bud. However, the imagined romantic meeting did not happen. Shaq took the initiative to get closer, but with just one glance from Haila, he felt like he was falling into an abyss, and the enchanting moment in his heart was instantly thrown into the kingdom of Java. It was quite shameful that Shaq had a dream that night. In his dream, he confessed to Haila, who also agreed to him. However, as he pulled Haila and prepared to enter the marriage hall, he turned his head to find that the figure beside him had somehow transformed into a monster with a big mouth open and covered in carrion. Scared, he woke up on the spot, sweating profusely. After such a fright, Shaq couldn't fall asleep for a long time. So, the next day's mental state also appeared to be not very good. Fortunately, when he came over this morning, he found that his immediate supervisor Zheng Hai was not there. Moreover, Suyang, his arch-rival, seems to be in a bad condition, with heavier bags under his eyes. Thinking that Suyang came out of Haila's office yesterday, Shaq's mood instantly improved. It seems that it's not just me who didn't get along well with the Haila executive. In such a good mood, Shaq cleared his previous gloom and even hummed the folk songs of his hometown in a low voice while working. Not long after, Shaq noticed Zheng Hai with a gloomy face coming in from outside. Shaq quickly put away his smiling face, and his expression became serious and serious. Afterwards, Shaq discovered that Zheng Hai, who had returned, seemed to have some secrets and called in one by one his researchers. Even he is no exception. Do you know Aurora's powers? Room 5 of the laboratory was opened up by Zheng Hai as a temporary small room for the office. Entering room 5, Shaq was feeling uneasy in guessing Zheng Hai's thoughts, but he didn't expect him to ask such a question. Shaq was surprised in his heart and blurted out, "Ah. It seems you don't know either." Zheng Hai waved his hand and said, "You go out first." As soon as Shaq turned around, he said again, "After you go out, call Suyang over to me." "Okay, team leader Zheng." What did the team leader say? Shaq walked out of room 5 with a bewildered expression on his face. The saying goes, the person who knows you the best must be your opponent. If Zheng Hai asked other team members to find Suyang, he probably wouldn't be able to find him for a while. But when it comes to Shaq, it's very simple. During his work, Shaq would occasionally observe Suyang's movements. After encountering a wall at Haila's place yesterday, he became even more attentive to Suyang's situation. Before Zheng Hai returned, he noticed that Suyang had turned left outside. That direction 80% is going to the bathroom. So, after receiving Zheng Hai's task, Shaq arrived at the restroom as soon as possible. As expected, before he could officially enter the restroom, he met Suyang at the door. Just, the other person's image at this moment puzzled. Surprisingly, I didn't even wear any underwear. I didn't realize he had such a perverted hobby before, did I? Shaq didn't know what was on his mind, muttering inwardly. Seeing Shaq, Su Yang quickly covered his lower body with his hand and awkwardly smiled. The weather is a bit hot, and I can't pull it out when I go to the bathroom, so I plan to take off my clothes and wash it. Is the weather hot? Shaq looked at the air conditioning system on the ceiling, his face full of doubt. To his knowledge, the underground base uses integrated central air conditioning with 128 ventilation openings for ventilation. That is to say, the base is basically at a constant temperature, and there is no problem of sudden cooling or heating. It's clearly an excuse. Then you go take a shower first. Shaq waved his hand, looking disgusted. Looking at Su Yang as he walked away, he thought to himself, when I turn around and say you ask Team Leader Zhang to wait for you, I don't believe that your image in Team Leader Zhang's heart can always be so glorious. By the way, I can also help you promote your glorious deeds for free. On this side, Su Yang naturally didn't know what was going on in Shaq's heart. After sending Shaq away, he plunged into the bathroom. Pick up the nozzle, adjust the water temperature and flush it onto yourself. Rinse while rubbing with your hands. After obtaining the primary sulfuric acid antibody, the sulfuric acid on Su Yang's body is not much different from ordinary liquids. The only thing that made him feel a bit uncomfortable was that there was no burning sensation, and the sulfuric acid felt slippery and thick, just like something that flowed out of an organ when he was feeling unwell, a bit disgusting. Moreover, this thing has strong adhesion. Even if Su Yang rubbed it on his body, and even applied shower gel, he could still feel its residue. He rubbed and washed for 20 to 30 minutes before Su Yang walked out of the bathroom when he felt almost done. I repeated my actions when I came over, and this time there was no accident. Su Yang safely returned to the toilet compartment. After putting on his clothes, he let out a long breath and said, "It's safe. Damn it. Taking a shower feels like fighting. Next time you do this kind of experiment, be sure to prepare in advance." When Su Yang returned to the office, Shaq leaned in with an anxious expression on his face and said, "How did you come? Leader Zhang is almost waiting. You go to room 5, he's waiting for you there." Su Yang looked at Shaq suspiciously. This guy just went to call him, isn't he just here to inform him of this? Surprisingly, he ran away without saying anything. However, even if Shaq tells the truth, he is likely to choose to take a serious shower before coming out. After all, if sulfuric acid residue is not handled properly, it is highly likely to burn his clothes, and no matter where he is, things will not look good. Of course, Shaq is also guilty of not being informed. On July 3, 687 in the Starry Sea calendar, Shaq deliberately ignored the situation and wanted to deceive me. Su Yang added a vivid touch to Shaq's notebook. Laboratory Room 5. Zheng Hai was not as angry and frustrated as Shaq and Su Yang had imagined, but rather somewhat calm. As Su Yang walked in, he put down the cigarette in his hand and asked, "Did you write down the statement that Aurora's constitution is highly likely to be a supernatural ability?" Su Yang looked at Zheng Hai's face, pondering the words to reply in his heart. Zheng Hai continued to exaggerate, "Don't rush to deny it. I've asked everyone else before. None of them. When asked this question, only you appeared the most calm. This thing is not impossible to investigate, and if it's really you, denying it is useless." After finishing his words, Su Yang stopped thinking and smiled, saying, "Teacher Zheng, this statement was indeed written by me. After analyzing Aurora's body data, some ideas came to my mind and I casually wrote them down. The presentation also used speculation. It should be. There's no big problem, right?" Here, Su Yang used the term teacher to refer to him because Zheng Hai had previously served as a former teaching teacher. In situations where the situation is unclear, using this word appears more familiar. "Call me Team Leader Zheng," Zheng Hai said bluntly. Although his mood has eased a lot after a period of sedimentation, it does not mean that his depression has been completely eliminated. Anyone who gets scolded inexplicably and strangely cannot clear their frustration so quickly. Why do you look like a child? Su Yang twitched at the corner of his mouth, muttering inwardly. After Zheng Hai finished speaking, he didn't hesitate about his title, but continued, the leader saw your speculation and was very angry. Now let me come to you to explain. Thinking that Su Yang was after all a capable general under his command, Zheng Hai added, you prepare for it. The leader is mostly in a state of anger, so it's okay to go there later. During the time waiting for Su Yang, Zheng Hai came up with many questions. The whole incident this time was not complicated, it was just that Su Yang proposed a conjecture, which caught Cyberlos off guard and made him feel that the affairs of the research institute were just out of his control. Essentially, it is normal for a researcher to make new discoveries and fill them out in a report. Perhaps, just like Su Yang just said, he didn't even realize what was wrong with his report. Which leader? Although asking a question at this moment seemed awkward, Su Yang still spoke up. Zheng Hai said angrily, which other leader can it be? Of course, it's my direct leader, Mr. Cyberlos. Oh, good. Su Yang agreed and walked out of the temporary office. Chapter 7. Sprint before entering the stage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since Zheng Hai said there was no need to rush, Su Yang really wasn't in a hurry. After leaving, he immediately looked at his experience on the panel. 67.85/100000, make some more fuss and try to get into the E. level before meeting Cyberlos. In case something goes wrong, you can still hold him hostage and escape. Anyway, this guy is notorious for being afraid of death. Su Yang remembers that when Xiao infiltrated the base to rescue Aurora in the original text and wanted to obtain host privileges, the first thing that came to his mind was Cyberlos. In this guy's heart, Xiaoming comes first, experiments come second, and loyalty does not exist. When life is threatened, any moral character can be discarded. So, if you really encounter any unsolvable problems, holding Cyberlos hostage is absolutely safe. Returning to the workstation, Su Yang rummaged through the experimental materials on his own workstation, and then went to the experimental warehouse to look for them. A few minutes later, a bottle of sulfuric acid with a concentration of 60% and a bottle of sulfuric acid with a concentration of 98% appeared in his medicine box. In addition, he also received several bottles of high-concentration nitric acid and hydrochloric acid and put them all in his medicine box. He had originally planned to take some alkaline substances, but considering that alkaline substances seemed to erode slowly, he gave up. Looking at his achievements, Su Yang felt a sense of accomplishment and couldn't help but drift to the budding drug laboratory. If there is a chance in the future, be sure to go to the drug laboratory to get some poison to eat. Thinking of poison, he couldn't help but think of toxic metals overall, there is great potential for the future. Su Yang has an impulse to burst out laughing. The atmosphere in the laboratory is relatively relaxed, even during working hours when the researchers have something to do and leave temporarily, no one will take care of it. Not to mention Su Yang, who has obtained permission from his superiors and is openly absent from work. He carried the medicine box all the way back to his dormitory. Upon reaching his own territory, Su Yang completely unleashed himself. Not long after, he stripped off his body and entered the bathroom. Su Yang's bathroom is not big, only 4.5 square meters in size. There is already a wash basin, a toilet, a squatting toilet, and some shower facilities. After the predecessor moved in, another washing machine was added. This already small space looks even more full. Su Yang first estimated the potential damage caused by various acids, as long as you apply it slowly, there shouldn't be any problem. Even if it splashes onto something else, you can immediately rinse it with water. Confirming the feasibility of the matter, Su Yang placed the medicine box on the wash basin and with a click, opened it. Touching the bottles and cans filled with highly corrosive liquids with his palm, Su Yang felt a different kind of warmth. In his perspective, These bottles of acid seemed to turn into cans of experience. Suyang first chose sulfuric acid. He has some OCD and likes to walk all the way to the dark. When sulfuric acid with a concentration of 60% is applied to the body, the damage information on the panel jumps wildly again. Just Suyang glanced at the number behind the damage and frowned. Surprisingly, there's only 1 point left. Compared to sulfuric acid at a concentration of 30%, it is inferior. It seems that the primary sulfuric acid antibody has given him a much higher sulfuric acid resistance bonus than he had imagined. With this in mind, Suyang decided to mount a 98% concentration of sulfuric acid. You have been attacked by Suyang, with a health of 0.1. Damage absorption I takes effect, and your current attack power is 5.7. The damage judgment is 1/5, and the damage is invalid. You gain 0.1 experience points. You have been attacked by Suyang with a health of 0.3. You have been attacked by Suyang with a health of 0.4. You have been attacked by Suyang with a health of 0.2. You have been attacked by Suyang with a health of 0.5. Finally, it's a match. Suyang's eyebrows relaxed. However, before he could be happy for long, a warning sound came. Ding, the host has a survival time of more than 10 minutes in 98% sulfuric acid concentration. The host's specialty, primary sulfate antibody, has been upgraded to intermediate sulfate antibody, with 100% exemption from sulfuric acid concentration below 60%, inclusive, and a significant reduction in damage caused by sulfuric acid concentration above 60%. In addition, for other acidic liquids, they enjoy a higher degree of damage reduction depending on the liquid. Is this an upgrade for primary sulfuric acid antibodies? Nima, do you still have a bit of reserved expertise? Suyang was somewhat surprised and speechless. He looked at the system panel. Sure enough, the damage above was like encountering a stock market crash, and all of them fell back 1 or 2 points. At this point, the experience on the panel has reached 14689, and the distance from 100,000 is still not small. It's okay, there's still time. Under Suyang's ruthlessness, he simply took out concentrated hydrochloric acid and concentrated nitric acid. These two things are easy to evaporate, but it doesn't matter. Suyang took out a small knife from the bedroom and equipped it, then returned to the bathroom and closed the glass door directly. He took out hydrochloric acid and nitric acid and applied them on his body. This wave, he wants to play big. You have been attacked by Suyang, with a health of 0.3. Damage absorption I takes effect, and your current attack power is 13.17. The damage judgment is 313, and the damage is invalid. You gain 0.3 experience points. You have been attacked by Suyang with 0.8 health points. You inhale toxic gases, health 0.1. You inhale toxic gases, health 0.10. Sure enough, even if it evaporates into gas, these two acids are still contributing to his upgrading cause. 10 minutes later, Suyang obtained the antibody expertise for hydrochloric acid and nitric acid, and to his surprise, the system also included a hypochlorite antibody expertise. The experience value growth rate has declined for the first time. 30 minutes later. Ding, the host has survived for more than 30 minutes in an environment with frequent hypoxia. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the specialty. Anaerobic God of War, beginner. The host's dependence on oxygen has decreased by 30%. At this point, Suyang's experience value has risen to 79,621 points, and the ultimate goal of 100,000 points is already very close to Xiao's.com. But the prompt sound that rang out again slowed down his speed of gaining experience once again. And maybe the intermediate sulfuric acid antibody will also be upgraded. In addition, both the concentration of various acids on the body and the density of toxic gases in the air are decreasing. Apply again. Suyang shook his head. If this situation continues, the effect of the acid applied later on will definitely become worse and worse. We need to find a new way. Immediately, Suyang thought of eating. Since the respiratory tract can contribute to his experience and career, then the digestive system should also be good, right? Do whatever you say. Suyang picked up the 98% concentration sulfuric acid next to him and wanted to try it directly. But after thinking about it, he put it down and picked up the 60% concentration of sulfuric acid again. The internal organs of the body are definitely more fragile than the external skin, and even with intermediate sulfuric acid antibodies, to enhance resistance, it is still a bit safer. The fact proves that his caution is effective, as only 60% concentration of sulfuric acid caused him up to 5 damage points. If Suyang had not been equipped with a small knife before, he might have sweated a cold sweat, but now he is equipped with a small knife, and his attack power of up to 13.17 points makes him feel very relieved. So, Suyang can only say that he is not strong enough. So, 98% concentration of sulfuric acid appeared in his hands and he slowly drank it down. Well, thick, besides the burning and spicy sensation, there's a bit of sourness, a bit of stench, and a hint of sweetness. Suyang felt that after completely conquering concentrated sulfuric acid, perhaps he could make it his unique drink. Chapter 8. Advanced. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding, the host survived for more than 30 minutes in 98% sulfuric acid, and the intestines were quenched with 98% sulfuric acid. The host's specialty, intermediate sulfate antibody, was upgraded to advanced sulfate antibody, which is 100% immune to all concentrations of sulfuric acid damage and has a certain resistance to sulfuric acid-derived acids. In addition, for other acidic liquids, they enjoy a high degree of damage reduction depending on the liquid. It was time to come, just as Suyang's experience value was slowly rising to 99,912, the sulfuric acid antibody was once again upgraded. To Suyang's surprise, the sulfuric acid damage exemption of advanced sulfate antibody was suddenly increased to 100%, blocking Suyang's path to gain experience with sulfuric acid. Suyang couldn't help but laugh and cry about this. He doesn't know whether to be happy about becoming a superpower or sad about his upgrade shortcut being blocked by the system. And Suyang looked at the almost stagnant experience bar. The impact of advanced sulfuric acid antibodies is far more than just targeting sulfuric acid. The enhanced acidic antibodies also significantly reduce the effectiveness of nitric acid and hydrochloric acid. In addition, the antibodies already present in both acids can cause damage that can be quickly ignored. 2 minutes later. Ding, the host has survived for more than 40 minutes in an environment with frequent hypoxia. Congratulations to the host Anaerobic War God, Jr., for upgrading to Anaerobic War God, Intermediate, which reduces the host's dependence on oxygen by 60%. Good guy, now even the damage from toxic gases can be ignored, and the experience value completely stops at 99987. Even if Suyang poured the remaining hydrochloric acid and nitric acid into his stomach, it only brought him a slight increase. It is estimated that he can accumulate 5 points of experience and be grateful. There are still 13 points of experience left. There's no other choice, either stab your butt with a small knife or kowtow. Just make a few dozen or so moves. After looking at the small knife with some signs of corrosion and even a decrease of 1 point in attack power, Suyang ultimately chose to kowtow. With the sound of bang 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 bang, Suyang's experience value finally reached 100,000. We have detected that your experience value has reached 100,000, and you can enable level E advancement. Do you want to enable advancement now? Attention! Each advancement is a sublimation of life, and after advancement, the host's various attributes will be greatly improved. However, the advancement process is irreversible and cannot be interrupted. Once interrupted, the advanced experience points will accumulate again from 0. Please confirm that the advanced environment is safe before starting the advancement. If one's dormitory is not safe, then there is no safe place. Without hesitation, Su Yang said directly, let's start advanced. In progress. As Su Yang's words fell, he felt a slight swelling and pain in his head, as if something was tearing apart his soul. Immediately after, the body began to react, and a new force was born from nothingness. Su Yang felt that every moment, his body was undergoing earth-shattering changes, as if every cell had been reborn and filled with strength. Amidst the surging force, Su Yang felt like a bulging balloon that could explode at any moment. At the same time, the panel information is refreshed. You have reached level E and become a true superpower. Your unique ability specialty Damage Absorption I has been upgraded to Damage Absorption 2. You have gained expertise in Digestive System Enhancement, Beginner, your expertise in Advanced Sulfate Antibodies, Intermediate Nitrate Antibodies, Intermediate Hydrochloric Acid Antibodies, and Primary Hyposulfuric Acid Antibodies, is merged into Acid Antibodies, Intermediate. You have mastered the skill, Precision Shooting. Your skill, Basic Shooting, has advanced to Proficient Shooting. Su Yang suddenly felt that his negative state had dissipated, giving him a feeling of being reborn. Whether it's vision, smell, hearing, touch, taste, or even the sixth sense in the dark. All have achieved significant improvement. The texture on his arms was so delicate in his eyes that even the usually inconspicuous small fluff was clearly visible. Under the amplification of his sense of smell, a sour smell filled the air, forcing Su Yang to immediately adjust his breathing rhythm. Success. Dude, you've reached level E. Su Yang felt refreshed and quickly opened the system panel. Host. Su Yang Race. Carbon-based human, yellow, template. NPC level. E, 1/5 million, specialization. Geometric thinking. Intelligence +5 intermediate spiritual resilience. Willpower resistance +6 sprout junior researcher. Intelligence +2 damage absorption type 2, special ability. When taking damage, you can absorb any damage that is not higher than your own attack power, convert it into your own experience points, and offset the current damage. The conversion rate increases with level, and currently the conversion rate is 20%. In addition, those who suffer damage higher than their own attack power will receive a 20% reduction in final damage. New. Acid antibodies, intermediate. You have strong acid resistance, and further, you may call yourself the Acid King. Immune to 100% sulfuric acid damage, 95% nitric acid damage, 96% hydrochloric acid damage, 99% hypochlorous acid damage, and other ordinary acidic liquids immune to over 70% damage. At the same time, it has strong resistance to advanced acidic drugs. New. Anaerobic God of War, intermediate. Your dependence on oxygen has decreased by 60%, perhaps you can look forward to the era of breathing without oxygen. New. Digestive System Enhancement, Beginner. You have gained some insights about eating, and your digestive system has been strengthened. When you eat foods that are not part of your race's regular diet, there is a certain chance that you will get the nutrients your body needs from them. The specific probability varies depending on the type of food. Skill. Proficient Shooting. You can proficiently use most firearms and have good shooting speed and accuracy. New. Precision Shooting. Increases shooting accuracy correction by 10%. Equipment. Normal fruit knife, corrosion, length 15 cm, weight 120 g, attack power 7.10, durability, 78 out of 100. After advancing, Su Yang could clearly feel his differences. Besides the 5 senses mentioned earlier, what impressed him the most was strength. Whenever he tries hard, he can clearly feel an invisible wave of power forming around him when looking for Shuyuan. www.xiaoshuyuan.com. This feeling is like an internal skill in the world of martial arts, which can harm people from afar. However, at present, this kind of strength is still very small, far less than the strength he can directly grasp. At the end of the day, he is not from the martial arts school and is not good at using his strength. Speaking of which, should I be a power type? Su Yang remembered that the system gave him a power. Damage absorption, but this power was too passive to look like a power. Moreover, if he wants to work in the Star Sea, just resisting beating is not enough. He also needs to find ways to enhance his attack power and learn more attack methods, otherwise he will only be a sandbag to others in the future. Su Yang couldn't help but think of the superpower system of Xinghai. Among the 5 major systems of the Star Sea, the psychic system relies on the potential for developing psychic abilities and lacks replicability. The magic and mechanical departments are known for their erudition, and without the support of systematic instant learning, it is definitely not realistic for Su Yang to start from scratch. This leaves only the martial arts and chanting styles. Unlike magic and mechanics that prioritize erudition, martial arts and mindfulness emphasize purity. The martial arts school specializes in cultivating physical strength and has created countless martial arts schools. The Nianli department specializes in spiritual power, using the combination of spiritual power and qi to influence matter and even create illusions, achieving both offense and defense. Both of these systems can serve as directions for Su Yang's efforts. Su Yang's panels have no specific career restrictions, theoretically he can develop in any direction he wants. But human energy is limited, and Su Yang cannot cultivate both. So, whether it's martial arts or chanting, he has to choose one. Chapter 9. Let's eat a meal first. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pay attention back to the system panel. This time, several different types of acidic antibodies were directly synthesized into acidic antibodies, intermediate, and Su Yang looked forward to the scene when his various antibodies were successfully combined in the future. That scene must be quite beautiful. In addition, the most eye-catching feature on the panel is the digestive system enhancement, beginner, skill. It seems that it was born because he had been pouring acid recklessly before. Surprisingly, nutrition can be obtained from foods other than regular food. If I understand correctly. Should this sentence mean that even if I drink sulfuric acid, I may still be able to absorb energy from it for my life's consumption? Su Yang's face was strange. Although the proportion that can be absorbed now may be very small, it can still be upgraded. Beginner level is not strong enough, intermediate and advanced levels are better, right? Su Yang couldn't help but think of the scene when he was eating concentrated sulfuric acid as a nutrition stick. If a passerby, especially a villain, comes over at this moment tsk. It seems that the sulfuric acid beverage will be ready soon. Is the system trying to lead me all the way to a strange path? Immediately, an uncontrollable smile appeared on his face. However, I like it. As for other skills and specialties on the panel, it's not bad, it's just that either the effect is not obvious enough, or it's temporarily not useful, and there's no way to capture Su Yang's heart. Of course, it is necessary to practice those 2 shooting skills. After all, firearms are still very useful at this stage, especially for people like him who lack attack methods. The experience points for upgrading from E. level to D. level have increased by 50 times, and the path for upgrading to acid level has basically been blocked. Su Yang knew that his future upgrade path might not be so smooth. The acid on his body was no longer effective. Su Yang pressed the ventilation button to extract the toxic gases from the air, took a shower, put on clothes, and started cleaning the bathroom. During this time, because he couldn't control the surging power for a while, he accidentally tore apart 2 towels. However, it doesn't matter anymore. After all this experience, he plans to replace all the towels in the bathroom to train his strength and control. He was busy and it took him over half an hour to leave the dormitory. In the corridor, Su Yang looked at his watch. Oh, it's almost 12 o'clock. Let's go have a meal first. So, he stopped in his tracks as he walked towards the office of the vice dean and turned towards the direction of the cafeteria. Vice dean's office. Today, Cyberlos did not go down to the laboratory to organize research, but instead browsed through departmental work exchange information in the office. This is rare for someone like him who has a deep love for research. In the past, things like responding to departmental coordination information were all entrusted to work assistants. Why haven't you come yet? Cyberlos was a bit restless. After scolding Zheng Hai this morning, he asked him to bring the person who made the suggestion over, but it has been over 2 hours and the person hasn't arrived yet. When did Zheng Hai become so restless? Is it because I scolded him this morning and caused a stir? Cyberlos couldn't help but think of the scene when he called Zheng Hai over in the morning. Shouldn't it be like that? Lao Zheng isn't that kind of person, is he? Besides, his attitude at the time didn't seem like he was in a state of emotional turmoil. As it was almost time to order, Cyberlos had to personally call Zheng Hai. Hello, leader, may I ask if you have any instructions? Zheng Hai's tone on the phone was very respectful and could not hear any dissatisfaction. Cyberlos finally confirmed his own judgment, and it should be true that he had overthought it. Instead, he had some doubts. Since the problem wasn't with Zheng Hai, then, have you notified the person who made the suggestion? Cyberlos asked. Announced. Zheng Hai's tone was very positive and continued, but this person is a bit nervous when he first meets the leader, so he needs to prepare more. So it's like this. Cyberlos said, don't prepare, let him come directly. What? He hasn't. Oh, okay, I'll let him go over and report to you now. What's going on with Su Yang? Zheng Hai hung up the phone and hurriedly walked out of the temporary office. Su Yang. Where is Su Yang? After walking around the laboratory, Zheng Hai didn't see Su Yang's figure and had to grab the researcher next to him and ask. The researcher was taken aback and said, I just saw him carrying a medicine box out, and there was quite a commotion. Don't you know? Zheng Hai's face turned black and he said to himself, I know, so I won't ask you. Ignoring the researcher's question, he turned around and returned to the temporary office, took out his phone and called Su Yang. You must answer, little ancestor. You must answer the phone. As the phone rang, Zheng Hai kept praying in his heart. The previous events have already made Cyberlos angry once, and if there is another problem, it will be troublesome. The phone rang for a while, but no one answered. It automatically hung up, and Zheng Hai continued to call. Despite making 5 or 6 consecutive calls, Su Yang still couldn't answer the phone. Zheng Hai knew that making a phone call was probably not feasible. So, he simply asked other researchers to help find someone, and at the same time, he took the initiative to call Cyberlos. On the phone, he spoke in a sincere tone as much as possible, Leader, you see it's almost time for dinner. Would it affect your lunch if Xiao Su goes to Shuyuan www.xiaoshuyuan.com right now? So, I'll invite you to the senior section of the cafeteria for dinner. After we finish our meal, can we let him meet you? Zheng Hai mentioned that the high-end area of the cafeteria is specially provided by the cafeteria, and the ingredients inside are all mountain delicacies and wild animals. Those who can eat inside not only need to have status, but also money. Even Cyberlos cannot have meals inside, so it still has a certain attraction for him here. After thinking for a moment, Cyberlos felt that the busy noon was indeed a bit inappropriate, so he said, so let's go eat first. Upon hearing Cyberlos relax, Zheng Hai breathed a sigh of relief and quickly responded, okay, I'll arrange it right away. You can come directly to the cafeteria later. After entering the E.level, Su Yang clearly felt that his appetite had increased. He was considering whether he wanted to learn from Han Xiao and eat energy bars every day in the future. But soon, he shook his head. Even if the taste of the energy stick is good, eating the same thing every day can really be boring. He has traveled through time and doesn't want to improve his life. Every day, he still behaves like an ascetic monk and doesn't work. When we have money and power in the future, we must raise a bunch of chefs and be able to cook delicious food from all over the world. Of course, it would be even better if the chef was also a beautiful woman, Suyang thought with a hint. He couldn't help but analyze the possibility of cultivating Haila and Aurora into famous chefs. After finishing his meal, Suyang walked slowly towards the dormitory to digest his food. As for going to see Cyberlos, don't worry. Where can I go to see the leader at noon? Are you still letting others rest? Chapter 10. First meeting with Cyberlos. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Canteen. Cyberlos was pushing cups and cups with Shanghai when suddenly a phone call interrupted his interest. This ringtone is not his usual ringtone. When this bell rings, there is only one possibility. That's because the leader has something to ask him for. Cyberlos stood up from his seat and picked up the phone, pressing the answer button. Well, leader, okay. What? You want to see him now? Okay. I'll arrange it for you right away. Shanghai knew from the look on Cyberlos that there was probably something important that he needed to handle personally. So, when Cyberlos finished answering the phone, he took the initiative to say, if you have something to do, go ahead and I'll have the cafeteria make another one for you later. Cyberlos looked at Shanghai with a strange expression and said, no need, it's still related to you. You can ask that little Sue where he is now and ask him to wait for me in my office. I'll be there right away. Approaching, seeing the confusion in Shanghai's eyes, he added, the leader wants to see him. Shanghai's pupils suddenly widened and he was surprised in his heart, how could it be? Just because there was an extra sentence in the report. In theory, the leader should not be so concerned about this matter. Leader's office. Ha! I just got in touch with Haila and then turned around and said, the organization should stop drawing blood from Aurora. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Suyang. I want to see if he really has a clear conscience or if he has developed feelings for the organization. The leader of the budding organization slowly put down his report. Instead, he picked up another report and carefully examined it. The above provides a detailed introduction to Suyang's experience before and after joining the organization. Suyang joined Manya before the age of 7 and was a talent cultivated step by step by the organization. His past experiences have also demonstrated absolute loyalty to the organization. If it weren't for this, the leader would not just suspect him now, but speak to him through the iron fence. On the other side, Suyang was walking back to the dormitory when suddenly the phone rang. Suyang took it out and saw that it was Shanghai's, so he pressed the answer button. Hello, Team Leader Zheng. Oh, good, I'll be right over. Phone. What phone? Oh, I just went to eat, maybe because the cafeteria was a bit noisy and I didn't hear you. Sorry. The things Shanghai mentioned made Suyang feel a bit inexplicable, so he took the initiative to flip through his phone after answering the phone. Good guy, there may be no less than 100 messages accumulated above. There are both phone prompts and text messages, as well as messages from the budding researcher group. It can be seen that Shanghai was anxious at that time. You said you don't need to rush. Besides, I was in the cafeteria at that time and it was really noisy. It's normal not to hear the bell, right? Suyang muttered to himself. However, when he said this, he was somewhat lacking in confidence. This time, I'm afraid it's a disaster for Lao Zheng. Perhaps due to the image issue of Cyberlos in the original text, Suyang had no sense of awe towards him. So, he didn't pay much attention to his reception. Now, after all, he was still working under the control of Cyberlos. You still need to have the reverence for your own direct leadership. Cyberlos is a biological scientist and one of the senior researchers on the run for Ruelan. Since extraterrestrial visitors visited this land several decades ago, the collision of major civilizations on the blue ocean star has become increasingly fierce, and war is inevitable to break out. In this war, weak civilizations were annexed or eliminated, while powerful civilizations gradually emerged. In 687 AD, the only remaining civilizations on the planet Blue Sea were the Star Dragon, Haila, Tyrus, Ruelon, Odafina, and Red Maple, as well as the Sprout of the Avengers, a group of 6 rebellious nations. In addition, there are still a large number of wanderers and warlords in areas that neither the 6 kingdoms or the Sprout can take into account. Between Menya and the 6 kingdoms, the tentacles of the dark web are scattered throughout the Blue Sea star. This is the general power pattern of the current blue ocean star. Among the 6 countries, Ruelon is known for its abundance of madmen, and the Cyberlos that emerged from Ruelon fully reflects the value of Ruelon madmen. In his various studies, Cerberus not only showed no sympathy for his own kind, but was also filled with a desire for dissection. After arriving at Menya, he also participated in multiple projects such as Valkyrie, Super Warrior, genetic modification, human-animal suturing, hybrid breeding, etc. Countless people died in his hands, and many of them were not easy to die. It is this person who not only has the timidity opposite to his crazy desire to study, but also has a kind and good appearance. In Su Yang's perspective, Cyberlos is a middle-aged man in his 50s, with a pair of clear blue eyes and a face that perfectly matches his facial features. Apart from having some baldness on his head, he is completely a charming foreign uncle. It's hard to imagine him picking up a knife and dividing your body into individual parts, and then doing various indescribable things about these parts. What is even more unimaginable is that when you place the knife on his neck, he can kneel down for you without hesitation and sing, "Conquer," without any restraint. Zhaoshuyuan.com, are you the little Su who gave suggestions, named Su Yang? Su Yang had just arrived at the Vice Dean's office when Cyberlos welcomed him out. "Yes, hello Dean." Su Yang warmly greeted. "Come with me." Before Su Yang could ask, Cyberlos hurriedly roared and pulled Su Yang towards the elevator. "What are you?" Su Yang was a bit puzzled. He thought it was Cyberlos who wanted to see him, but it didn't seem like the situation now. He couldn't help but have some bad ideas in his mind, such as slicing and dismembering. Of course, these ideas just passed in a blink of an eye. If you really plan to do something to him, it's not that Cyberlos is waiting for him, but that the guards will come directly to pick him up. "Just come with me, the leader wants to see you." Cyberlos became impatient and beckoned Su Yang to follow. "Does the leader want to see me?" Su Yang's gaze toward Cyberlos suddenly became dangerous, and he couldn't help but analyze. It's not safe to see the leader at this moment. That's a D+ level, and it's not an ordinary D+. If it falls into his hands, he won't be able to run away. Why don't we just hold Cyberlos hostage and escape now? Su Yang estimated that, based on the value of Cyberlos, there is still a high possibility of successfully taking him on the run. He is not the number 0 wanted by Menya all over the world. Menya wouldn't even care about Cyberlos just to kill him. However, in this case, all the previously planned routes will have to be reconsidered. Moreover, this escape may lead to the wet nurse and thug being caught first. No way. Su Yang shook his head, intending to stay and take a look. The situation should not be so bad as to be unavoidable.